Hi, I'm Corey, and this is Playhard Playbook Home. The purpose of this series is to follow me as I go through my real-life home renovations. I'm a 10-year real estate veteran, and I hope that by following along with this series, you're able to gain from my experience, get some knowledge from my successes, and also learn some missteps to avoid through my pitfalls. I'm going to try to keep this series as closely as possible to my real life home renovations, so I wanted to give a brief update on where everything stood for me. Last Thursday I began the demolition process, and that has continued on until about yesterday, and now we're ready for the carpenters to move in, where they'll be building some stairs, finishing out walls that were demolished, and also building out the attic space to be a functional playroom. With that being said, let's hop right into the topic of today, which is the budget. So with talking about the budget, I think the budget is really one of the main foundations for making sure you have a great renovation project on your hands. It certainly is one of the functional determining factors that you have at the end of your renovation project to say, was this successful or not? So making sure you follow along with your budget is really important. For a lot of people, though, I think the budgeting process is really overwhelming. So to help break it down and put it in more manageable bite-sized pieces, we're going to divide it into 3 parts. Today we'll just be going over an overview. We'll take a look at some important considerations you should have when planning your renovation project, and in particular your budget. For those considerations, we'll take a look at some important factors including your timeline, how to choose and work with your contractors, as well as how you make sure you're managing the price considerations by really doing your research. Over the next 2 series, we'll do some actual budgeting, first with a very simple budget, and then with a more complicated budget that's more appropriate for someone doing a really major project or someone who has continual projects. So they're going to do their kitchen and maybe look at their bathroom and then add a deck. So that will be the second and third installations. But right now, let's just go into some simple considerations when you're planning your budget and starting off your project. So one of the first steps you really should take when you even think about beginning a renovation project is lining out how you expect things to go and putting that all down on paper in a timeline. Now, the timeline can be simple or it can really get more complex depending on the complexity of your problems. But it's really the basis for you establishing your budget, because part of your budget is paying your contractors on a timely basis, deciding if they need to be paid up front, if you're paying for materials as the process goes along, if you're paying them while they complete certain measures. So you want to make sure that you have a firm foundation in the time frame you expect, so you know when and where you need to pay. Another reason it's important is because for most people, your mortgage payments have to be made on a certain day. So if it's a large renovation project that you're doing before you actually move in, you want to make sure that you have everything on pace, because if not, you're going to have to pay a mortgage payment whether or not you're in the house. And depending on your situation, you may also have a mortgage payment for your previous house, or a mortgage or rental payment for a house you're just temporarily residing in while the home renovations are completed. For me, it's particularly important because I am working on a 203K loan. This type of loan rolls in all of your renovation dollars with your mortgage. So 60 days into the time that you're purchasing the property, you're going to have a mortgage payment, and you probably want to make sure that you're at least on the road to the completing renovations, or you have everything worked out with wherever you reside, whether that's a rental payment or a mortgage payment for your previous home. So it's important to have everything on pace, because when there are delays, it usually ends up costing you money, whether it's in mortgage money, rental money, or just in delays in paying contractors. All of this costs money. At the end of the day, time does cost equal money when it comes to renovations, and you want to make sure that you prepare for the best and worst case scenarios. I think the easiest way to do that is to get all your information together on a time frame. A timeline sounds pretty basic, but really it's a good way to visualize how you expect everything to go and really pinpoint dates that are dependent on other dates. when you're doing a major renovation project like the one I'm encountering, you really want to make sure that some projects coincide, which is fine, but some projects are dependent, and you want to pinpoint the ones that are dependent and can't happen until another project is complete. For me, I put my timeline all together on a calendar. It's something I can share with my contractor, so the dates that he provides me, I went ahead and put on a time frame so he can see I expect to move into my house on this date. I've made sure to give him some leeway so that I have a worst case scenario on if things go wrong and a best case scenario for if things go perfectly. In renovations, they rarely go perfectly, but why not put it out there and hope for the best? The way I've worked my timeline is to really go through the dates that need to happen with my contractor, and I make sure to add one day to every time frame that he gives me. The demolition, for instance, he estimated would take about 4 days. So on my calendar, I plan for 5 days, and I make sure not to count the weekends. Now, maybe sometimes he works on a Saturday or Sunday, but I find by doing it this way, you have prepared a worst case scenario. And if one project finishes early, then you have some leeway for the next project, because chances are not every project will go so smoothly. Now, I went ahead and did this in Microsoft Office, just in Outlook, but you can do it in a lot of programs. Certainly Excel offers a great way to add some complexity to your time frames and have the numbers automatically calculated. But there's also another great program called MS Project that makes sure to get everything in line, has budgetary considerations factored into it, can give you some different variations for milestones. But if you're doing a small renovation project, you may not need something that's so complicated. In fact, an old school calendar works just as well. Writing down the dates helps you and your contractor coordinate on what your expectations are and any important milestones that you might have as far as paying subcontractors, buying materials, and keeping everything on budget and on time. It's a really important step, and although it may be a headache, it's well worth its weight in gold at the end of the day when your project closes on time and you don't have any extra mortgage payments or rental payments to worry about. As far as my particular project, a lot of the dates are contingent. For instance, I can't tear down all the walls of the kitchen until I make sure that the roof is reinforced. So my time frame roughly goes that we plan for about 4 days for demolition, about 5 days for the attic reconstruction, another 5 days for the roof, about 8 days for the bathrooms on the second floor, and the master bathroom on the second floor, and then between 14 days and 20 days for the kitchen and downstairs bathrooms. In between that, we have some other projects going on, including the foundation work and the windows, but the first time frame really focuses on the projects that are dependent on each other, either for monetary purposes to keep everything on budget, or just because it makes more sense as far as the flow of construction. Altogether, I do plan to be in the house living within 60 days, even though some of the construction will still be going on. So make sure that your time frames are set down in paper. You prepare for the worst when you put that information in, and you also note any budgetary considerations you have to have, such as days that mortgage payments are due, days that you plan to live in the property, or days that contractors or subcontractors expect to be paid. So let's now take a look and think about how you choose and work with your contractors. Now it's time to turn our attention to the process of choosing a contractor. Choosing a contractor can be pretty hard work. Like any professional, you're trusting this contractor to do the job effectively, efficiently, and hopefully on budget, which can be a difficult task, especially when you're new to the area that you're getting the renovations done in. For some old pros, you may already have a contractor that you know and love, and you can expect great work, a good quality of service, all at the same time. But if you're out choosing a new contractor, it's important to remember some important considerations when you're going through the process. A lot of times, especially considering this subject is in the budget portion of my series, You want to just get 3 bids and choose a contractor with the lowest bid. But at the end of the day, some of the lowest bids end up costing you the most money if you don't have a holistic consideration into the bid that they're giving you. So one of the easiest ways is to start off with just a basic conversation with the contractor. It's somebody you're really going to have to trust to do the work right, and you want to make sure that you like the person, you wouldn't mind working with them on a daily or weekly basis, and that you really feel like you can trust what they say and the quality of work that they will provide. So that means that you're going to have to do some research. I think the general recommendation is to get about 3 bids, but I would say before you even start the bidding process and in line with your budgeting process, you want to just do some general research. Go ahead and do a Google search to see, for whatever size your renovation project is, what the local cost is expected to be in your area. It'll give you a baseline and a way to figure out if somebody's giving you a really high price or a price that's way too low, which can be equally dangerous. So after you have a baseline and you can plan for about where you want to spend, making sure that it's a pretty reasonable amount, you start your bidding process. A lot of times it's hard because different contractors present bids in different ways. So at the end of the day, you have to take the different bids that come in all different forms and break it down to make sure that you're comparing apples to apples and not apples to oranges. An easy way to look at that is some contractors may upfront add in the cost of demolition or cleanup in their bid, while others may not, depending on the size of your project. At the end of the day, you want everything considered in all the bids because you want to make sure that you're choosing not just the lowest price on paper, but the lowest price to complete the project in full, and hopefully someone who's guaranteeing their work for a certain amount of time. So when you're going through the process first, like I said, make sure that you're going to do some general research to see about where you should stand on pricing, and then talking to the contractor in detail, making sure that their quote is holistic and includes everything that they will need to do to complete your project, and then move on to making sure that you are getting some real life references from your contractor. I've worked in commercial real estate for a while now, and despite having all of this knowledge, I have still run into some really, really, really lousy contractors. It's something hard to not avoid, but you can take some steps to make sure you do at least minimize your risk in this area by checking their references. Don't just ask for them. Actually call their previous clients and see where they stood. Make sure you ask questions like, were they on budget? Were they over time frames? And if they were, how long did it range? Because again, you're considering time to equal money. If someone quotes you a time frame and a price, and you ask a previous client and they say they're about 30 days late from the time frames they typically give, that may be a whole mortgage payment for you, which may be another $2,000-$3,000 you're adding into the price of their quote. So make sure that you do some research and actually call and follow up on previous references that they have. At the end of the day, it's a tedious process, but it's well worth the money if you choose the right contractor for you, especially considering your time and budget considerations. Another step you want to do is really think of your contractor as any other professional. Would you go to a doctor that you didn't trust or like? A contractor is someone you're going to have to work with closely, especially if it's a big renovation project. You want to make sure that your personalities mesh well as far as having conversations, working together, and really trusting them to do the job right. You also really want to consider if you're not going to like them. Not liking people really makes something that's an easy process a really difficult and strenuous one. Also, give them an upfront on what your consideration expectations are. Do you want to talk to someone every day? Do you not mind entrusting a contractor just to finish the work and you come back when it's all done? No matter where you are in the process, be upfront with your contractor. You don't want to be the person who says, no, just finish the project, and then show up every day on the work site asking if the nail is right or if everything they said is everything that they're guaranteeing. Just set whatever your expectations are up front So the price that they're giving you is in full consideration of what your expectations are. Nobody likes surprises. You don't want to be surprised by their behavior, and they probably don't want to be surprised by yours. Just consider it as someone, as closely as you consider someone you're going to date. You want to think about if the personalities match, if the delivery matches, if you could communicate well. If not, you'll end up being an unhappy camper. And believe me, being unhappy costs money. Maybe therapist bills, but at the end of the day, it definitely has a cost. So keep all these things in mind when you're going through the contractor's process. Once you set up a contractor and choose the bids, once you've fully gone over all the bids you've received, compared them, put some factors in for if you really like the contractor and if you feel like you can trust them. Choosing your contractor and sharing with them your timeline expectations is really important, and it ties in the whole budget so they know where you stand, when you expect to pay, what your firm guidelines are as far as dates you need to move, dates you start to lose money, and that may be something you can even incorporate into how you expect to pay your contractor. So all these things are closely tied in together, and before you set your final budget and timeline, they're all things you need to discuss with your contractor. So that being said, let's go into how you choose and research the prices for your renovation project. Okay, so we're down to the final consideration we're going to have as we do our budget overview. And that is really doing your homework. Making sure you put in the work to do the research to make sure that the pricing is on point, it's realistic, it fits into your own personal budget, and really that you get the best price. Now, I am known to like some things pretty extravagant, but I'm always into saving money. And so why shouldn't you? Any chance you have to save a couple of dollars is a great opportunity to make sure that you're on budget and that you have some cushion for the things that will go over. And trust me, in any renovation projects, there will be some unanticipated changes or problems or just some upgrades that you may choose to make. And if you have some leeway in the budget from saving a couple of dollars here, you have an extra couple of dollars to spend someplace else. So it's always a good thing. My recommendation when it comes to making sure you save money is to really start with a baseline. Let's take a refrigerator, for instance. You may go through the process of finding a refrigerator that you really like at Home Depot. Should you just go right to the cashier and purchase that refrigerator? I argue that maybe you shouldn't. Having some specific product details gives you a great opportunity to do probably a pretty quick and simple search, maybe on Google or Yahoo, to see what everyone's prices generally are. Especially if you're getting close to a holiday season, one sale may be really good. They may have some special promotion that gives you an opportunity to get something you did not even believe you could afford. So making sure you start with your baseline gives you a way to really monitor what's a good deal and what's not. Similar to your process with your contractor, you want to make sure that you're looking at the holistic deal and not just the price that you see on the price tag. That means if you're planning on getting any warranties, looking at the cost for delivery, looking at even taxes if you're going to order something online, and comparing them all together, because sometimes the cheapest price that you see on a price tag may not be the cheapest price when you add a warranty, delivery, installation, anything else you need. When it comes to budgeting, being price conscious is especially important because things can add up really, really quickly. Take some simple knobs in your kitchen. You can buy a pack of knobs for probably $1 each at Home Depot, but you can get extravagant and buy knobs at $30 a piece. That adds up so quickly and adds up in the thousands, so it can make a really big impact on your budget depending on the fixtures and finishes that you like. Those are probably the things that are hardest to do because it's not something that you may be knowledgeable about or have easy access to really what the end product will require. That's a good place where you can involve your contractor to see what they feel like is typical for your project, or even going to something like model homes that are in the business of knowing how many knobs they need, how much square footage they need for carpet, or how many towels they need for any project. So it's a good place to start. You will have to get really familiar with your measuring tape because you do want to make sure that some things are precise. If you're getting a bid on towels, there are towels that are a foot and there's towels that are really minuscule. It's hard to compare one to the other if you're, again, not comparing apples to apples and not apples to oranges. So it's another great opportunity to incorporate a program that can do some easy calculations for you, so you're not running around with a calculator or making guesstimates that at the end of the day can often be wrong. I would suggest keeping a baseline, and the same with a contractor, doing 2 or 3 quotes just to make sure that you're comfortable with the price. There's nothing worse than buyer's remorse when you walk into another store and realize you could have saved hundreds or thousands of dollars just by doing some simple homework and really keeping track of prices. That is the worst feeling. So just make sure you avoid it by doing some simple homework. It doesn't have to be anything complicated. And actually nowadays there are a lot of scam programs that will take a tag and give you some prices for other local stores. So maybe even in store you can do a quick comparison and make sure you're paying the best price and the price you're most comfortable with for any given product. By making sure you do your homework, you can ensure yourself that your budget is pretty lean and mean as far as being accurate, and at the end of the day you're prepared for any surprises that are more than likely sure to come your way. Now we've gone over some of the major considerations when you're first sitting down and starting to plan out your renovation project. Now a lot of these things are incorporated in the budget, but maybe you don't have a strong budget or you don't have any other considerations, or it's a pretty small project. You still probably want to have some time frame considerations. You always want to do some price shopping and do your research as far as making sure your prices are on point and the best prices you can get. And when it comes to contractors, doing your research is paramount. It's just like finding a boyfriend or girlfriend. It's somebody you're going to have to work with a lot, and you want to be comfortable with them. The same way I'm sure you don't just go in the phone book and choose a doctor to do major heart surgery, is the same way you want to treat your contractor. Without doing the research, you could end up just pouring tons and tons of dollars down the drain, which you don't want to do. So now that we have some foundations for our budget considerations, in the next 2 series we'll be going over how to build a basic budget and then some more advanced considerations when you feel like you're an old pro or want to incorporate some additional considerations into your budget. Again, I'm Corey, and this is Playhard, Playbook Home, and we'll see you next time to go over how to build your actual budget. Thanks.